The United Nations Australia prepares to mark the 65th International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers. For many, this celebration will be tainted with sadness and pride. In 4 days' time, crowds of people will be gathered here at Anzac Square to commemorate those who have served and lost their lives in United Nations peacekeeping operations around the world. President of the United Nations Australia, Virginia Balmain, speaks with SBS News Australia about the United Nations and its peacekeepers.
Well, the United Nations associations are made up of volunteer people who want to support the United Nations in their programs and activities, and it was started just after the Second World War. At that time, about 20 countries set up associations which were supportive elements, volunteer support elements for the UN, and then gradually over the years more and more countries have come in, and there's now about 100 associations, and they take up trying to develop communication and understanding in the community of the role of the United Nations and the various programs that the United Nations is involved in throughout the world. There's just over 100 countries which are members of the WFUNA, which is the World Federation of United Nations Associations, and they vary from very, very small. We're quite a small group here, about 125 members, and then they grow depending on their activities and what they're doing. At one stage the UN realised that they had to have, because they don't believe in war and they don't have an army, etc., but that they needed to have some people who would maintain peace after particularly civil events or war events, and so they developed the concept of the Peacekeepers. That came also shortly after the Second World War, and Australians have been involved in the Peacekeepers as peacekeepers since that time. In fact, they were the first deployed groups that were deployed to Kashmir to try and keep peace in Kashmir during that Indian-Pakistani war period. So peacekeepers are very important. Mostly they're allocated or called upon by the UN and allocated by their countries, might be 10, 20, 50 or a battalion. Generally speaking, they don't have arms, but they go as a peacekeeping group, the famous Blue Berets, and that's their role, to try and maintain peace in countries which have undergone some sort of conflict. Now, the Peacekeepers Service is an opportunity to commemorate those people who have given their lives, about 30 Australians, given their lives in peacekeeping activities, those who are now peacekeepers, and of course their families who support them. So the 65th anniversary is a very important anniversary from the Peacekeeping Association point of view, because it commemorates 65 years of participation in trying to maintain peace in the world. The whole basis of the United Nations, and it was set up to do this, was to maintain peace and security. So if you believe in peace, and we have soldiers and policemen that go out keeping peace, then to me it seems really important that the community should be supporting peacekeepers so that we can maintain peace and not. Luckily Australia hasn't fallen into any civil war or wars, but it's still important to acknowledge. And also the Australian peacekeepers, of course, are committed to go overseas. They don't do peacekeeping here in Australia, but they do get into very difficult situations, and so this is an opportunity for us to acknowledge their contribution to the United Nations peacekeeping efforts. We hope that people will take part, say a prayer or two, lay a wreath, and remember all those who have given their lives and all those who have come home safely and all those families who have been supporting peacekeepers whilst they're away.